This year's college football season came and went in the blink of an eye. I mean, we're already in bowl season, and college football playoffs are right around the corner. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs are playing the number 4 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. And before we get into it, this is our first full season we've done with this channel. We started this channel around bowl season last year, and we just wanted to say thank you for all the support and the growth that we've had. You know, as long as we've been doing it, this is absolutely insane, and we love that, and we appreciate that. But Drew, kicking it to you, you know, this Georgia Bulldog team has been dominant all year, even in the games where things haven't been going their way for most of the game. They're only a score behind, or, you know, they still have the lead. They're just dominant all around this year. It seems, you know, even after they lost all those defensive guys to the draft last year, they've just replaced them with, you know, just as good talent. You know, the culture there is so strong, 0 transfers coming out of there. So, you know, when you look at this Georgia team, what are the main things that you see that's made this team so successful?
A lot of it's coaching. You know, like you said, there's a culture established at the University of Georgia. When you go and play for a Kirby Smart team, you know what his expectations are, and you know everyone buys into it, even whether you're coming in as a transfer, you know, a senior coming in, or if you're a new freshman coming in. You know, everyone knows what you're coming there to do, and that's to win a national title. Obviously, Georgia's recruiting has been top notch. You know, getting the best of the best. So, you know, that's definitely played a role. So, you know, they can kind of just reload the talent they lose. Now, the defense, I mean, it's no secret. The defense has taken a little bit of a step back as compared to last year. They're still a great defense nonetheless, but nowhere near as dominant, I feel like, the last year's defense was. They still put together a really good season, and a lot of it's been coaching. A lot of the players have been stepping up. There's a lot of players rotating in and out that are doing a great job. And then, you know, there are some games where you kind of look at and you question a little bit, especially the LSU game. Georgia's defense didn't play terrible, but there was just a lot of times in that second half where I feel like the secondary kind of broke down. A lot of it seemed mechanical more than scheme, in my personal opinion. Keely Ringo looks like his eyes, you know, they're just kind of going all over the place. You had Malachi Starks try to play the ball instead of batting it down, took a gamble and just completely whiffed on the ball. Just some things that are pretty uncharacteristic in that secondary, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit, especially going up against this Ohio State offense led by C.J. Stroud, Marvin Harrison, and all those elite Ohio State wide receivers. I mean, let's just call it how it is. Regardless of what they did against Michigan, getting held to 23 points, it's still an elite offense. But, you know, both teams are getting a pretty long break after their last game. Georgia has about 28 days. Ohio State a little bit more since they didn't play in a conference title game. One thing that definitely want to look for is the preparation time Kirby Smart has for that defense. I know Georgia struggled a little bit and gave up more points against LSU than they probably would have liked to have done. But giving Kirby Smart this much time to prepare a defensive game plan for this Ohio State offense, I feel like that's just been very beneficial for Georgia. You know, Aiden, talking about Ohio State and being the underdog coming off a really bad loss to Michigan at their own stadium, what is this Ohio State offense going to have to do if they want to beat this Georgia team?
Yeah, they're going to have to put the ball in C.J. Stroud's hands, and the pocket's going to have to protect him enough for him to be able to, you know, go through and make his reads. Whenever C.J. Stroud has time in the pocket to deliver the ball to his playmakers on the outside, good things happen for Ohio State. And in that Michigan game, they got held to 23 points, but they would drive the ball down the field and just get held up in the red zone. And so they're going to have to step up when their red zone efficiency if they're going to want to have a chance against the Georgia Bulldogs. And when I look at the games that Georgia's, you know, struggled a little bit in, you know, against Kentucky in the first half and against Kent State for a portion of that game, those two offenses did a great job of holding the ball and limiting Georgia's offensive possessions. In the Kentucky game at halftime, I think Georgia only had 9 points, but they only had 3 drives. All 3 drives ended in points. So this Georgia offense is very, very efficient, you know, and I've watched basically every single Georgia game this year from start to finish. And even in the games where it looks like they're struggling and you know, they're making mistakes and they're giving the other team so many chances, you know, to take the game. Let's not forget Georgia is negative in the turnover margin. And yes, the defense has regressed from last year's historic defense, but this defense is still, you know, great. And it starts with Jalen Carter in the front 7. They can get almost a guaranteed pass rush, only sending 4 or 5 guys. And a great pass rush helps the back end, and great coverage in the back end helps the pass rush. And, you know, you mentioned the shortcomings of this Georgia defense, which is their DBs. And Ringo, you know, I've been on him all year, and Georgia fans are so quick to come to my throat. But, you know, I just encourage them to look at the film. And I say Ringo does everything great. He's good in phase. He's good on the line of scrimmage, but his ball skills are not great. He'll be in position to make a play on the ball, and he just doesn't. And it's happened, you know, many times. Look at the LSU game. Look at the Missouri game. And then Malachi Starks, he does bite on a lot of underneath stuff when he has his assignment is over top. And that's Malachi Stark's biggest problem. Is he's just too aggressive. He's too quick to come upfield in the pass game. But a great pass rush will negate that, when the quarterback doesn't have the ability to look downfield.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on with all those things. I mean, the Georgia defense, it's like they're so close to being, dominant, and they have been dominant in a lot of games, but really that secondary, just a lot of question marks still that need to be answered. You would expect guys like Ringo to really be stepping up around this time in his career, and Malachi Starks, it's easy to give him a little bit more of a pass because he's a young freshman, and he's going to be really, really good. But when you look at the teams that have had success against Georgia on their defense, they've been attacking Ringo, they've been attacking the perimeter more, and of course Ohio State with C.J. Stroud, Marvin Harrison, they have the guys to do that on the outside. There's no doubt about that. And you can look at it two ways, especially that LSU game. I mean, you can argue that when the game was competitive and in reach, I mean, it was 35-10 at halftime, and that really told me everything I need to know until Georgia went in a turtle shell like they always do when they get these big leads. But still, nonetheless, I mean, the fact 30 points was still given up, regardless of what the score was, regardless of if the game was over at this point or this point. When you get in the playoffs, you got to play a full 60 minutes because you just never know. LSU is not an Ohio State when it comes to offense, and Ohio State can score points quick, fast, and in a hurry. When you're Georgia and Kirby Smart, one of the biggest things as a Georgia fan that just kind of bothers me is when they do get these big leads, they turtle shell. And we've seen it a couple times this year, primarily the Tennessee game and the LSU games and the Florida game. Those are all games that come to mind where I feel like Georgia could have really put the dagger in that third quarter, and then they just give up a bunch of points out of nowhere, or their offense just slows down. They're just trying to run out the clock. And, when the playoffs come around, I think you got to be able to just go for the full 60 minutes. You got this Georgia offense, when it gets going, it's very, very, very tough to stop. I think I said it earlier in the video, when you get a Staquavius coming into the game instead of a Stetson Bennett, Georgia's going to move the ball down the field, and there's almost nothing any team can do about it.
Yeah, before we get into the predictions, Drew, I just want to talk about Georgia's offense a little bit. They, it's obvious they have the best tight end in college football with Brock Bowers, but then they also have the second best tight end in Darnell Washington. And I truly believe that if Brock Bowers was on another team, we would be talking about Darnell Washington like he was the second coming of Christ, because he's an athletic freak. He's 6'7". He's basically another tackle, an offensive tackle that you can put on the field and dominate in the run game, and you're getting, generous numbers because this guy can absolutely destroy a linebacker in the run game. You're definitely not putting a DB on him. It must be like Christmas morning every single day for whoever draws plays for this Georgia offense, because they can do so much with the personnel that they have, and that's what makes them so hard to stop. They're just dominant in the run game, and it's no secret that that's Ohio State's weakness, and Georgia has a stable of running backs, and once you have to commit to stopping the run, that's when you see a lot of man coverage getting run. You see a lot of safeties getting drawn down into the box, and that's when Brock Bowers is wide open and everybody's confused. It's because the linebacker, the safety he's responsible for in man coverage, is biting on the run, and Brock Bowers is wide open. But one thing I'll say about this, they need to continue to feed the offense through the tight ends. They don't need to abandon giving Brock Bowers the ball. Like you mentioned this, they do start to coast, and they'll quit feeding Brock like in the first or second quarter. They don't need to be doing that. Ohio State's offense is going to keep them in this game no matter what. So like you said, they need to play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, and that's pretty much a good point to lead into my prediction. Georgia 6.5-point favorites. There's no doubt in my mind, and I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind, that if Georgia's offense shows up and they're efficient like they've been, some of the biggest games they played in the season, that Georgia can absolutely win this game by more than 6.5 points. Hell, they could win this game by more than 2 touchdowns if that was to happen. Especially if they are able to piece together a full 60 minutes, which I think that's been Georgia's biggest kryptonite this year. Georgia either chooses one half or the other in a lot of these games, and it's about time they put together a full 60 minutes. And I think Kirby Smart, with all the time he's had to prepare for a game like this, he's really been well known in terms of being able to execute off a long period of time of preparation. And I'm expecting nothing different. And when I just look at teams like Georgia and Ohio State, just the names alone, and you think about Michigan and you think about Alabama, the difference between the skill difference between the SEC and the Big Ten, I just think is still large. I mean, just look at the history. Look at 2020 in the national title game when Alabama played Ohio State. Both of the, everybody looked at those two teams as the top teams, and there was no doubt about that. But Alabama was just clearly so much better. And then last year, Georgia and Michigan in the playoffs. I mean, Georgia and Michigan were both really, really good teams, but Georgia was just so much better, and that was just so apparent. Long story short, I think the SEC is still just, at least the top, is just better than the Big Ten. And I'm going to believe that until I'm proven otherwise. So, I'm a little surprised to see this spread to be 6.5 points. This isn't even me trying to be biased or a Georgia homer. I just think Georgia's honestly way better than Ohio State, more than 6.5 points. I think Georgia's offense is going to show up. I don't think Georgia's going to have two bad defensive games in a row. I can't remember the last time under Kirby Smart I've seen Georgia put together two poor performances, especially in the secondary. That's going to be an emphasis and a point that's going to be hit on hard. Kirby Smart's going to be looking at those guys. He's going to be hard on these guys for the 3 or 4 weeks that they have to prepare. With that being said, I think Georgia just has too much firepower on offense. I think their defense is going to show up. I think Georgia's going to win by more than 6.5 points.
Yeah, I just want to start my prediction by saying I'm a huge fan of Jim Knowles. And I was saying coming into the season, everybody was saying, oh, it takes Jim Knowles 2 years. The first year Jim Knowles is at a new team, their defense sucks. And I'm just like, these guys don't know jack shit about football. And I was telling them, Jim Knowles is going to come in. There's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders, only bad coaches. And Jim Knowles is a great coach. He's going to come in. And Ohio State has the athletes. They're there. And what he's done, bringing in his system, and of course it's super simplified, but that's just allowed his athletes to, have the freedom to just make plays. You know what I'm saying? They're not thinking too much about what they have to do assignment wise. But with all that being said, and they did a great job of stopping the run against Michigan in that first half. And I was bragging to everybody. I even ran my mouth on Twitter saying, Jim Knowles and that defense, they done stepped up. They done stepped up when it counted. And then I had to eat my words because Michigan proceeded to run for almost 300 yards in the second half. And Georgia is just their offense is just too strong. Their offense is just too strong. And their defense, they got the defense to back it up. And, just to make a long story short, I think that Georgia is going to beat the piss out of every team they play in the college football playoffs. This is their national championship. So, I'm taking Georgia to win pretty big, definitely covering that 6.5.
Well, as always, guys, let us know down below in the comment section of what you think. I know it's been a little bit since we posted. Just things come up. It's just life. That's just how it goes. But, we have a lot of time and we have a lot of bowl games to cover. So the content's going to be coming out. We'll probably cover the other playoff game. That'll probably be our next video. And then we got a couple other the New Year's Six Bowls that we'll do. And then if you guys have any recommendations or any suggestions for any other bowl game that's not a playoff or New Year's Six, we could surely hop on that as well. So just be sure to let us know down below in the comments. As always, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That is very important for us. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. We'll see you in the next one.